Today's daf yomi is Makkos daf vav. This is the daf yomi for the second day of Pesach. We're recording it prior to Pesach, obviously, and so we're going to start on Hey Amud Beis at the Mishnah around 10 lines from the bottom. And today's daf is dedicated for Shmir for the Chayalim, Hatzal for the Shvuyim, and the Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Says the Mishnah, Al Pishnayim Eidim or Pishlosha Eidim. The pasuk tells us on the basis of two witnesses or three witnesses that the person is sentenced to death. So if the testimony can be upheld with two, why does the Torah have to say that it could be judged with three? If the testimony can be judged with two, then obviously three is okay. So the Gemara explains, so the Mishnah explains, it's to tell us that just like two witnesses, just like three witnesses who come can see that the first two witnesses were false witnesses. Also, two witnesses can come and disqualify three witnesses. The afilu me'an, even up to 100 witnesses can be disqualified by the first two witnesses. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says we're on the bottom of Hey Amud Beis, Uminayin, and how do we know? How do we know that they could disqualify even 100? We're on the bottom of Hey Amud Beis at the Mishnah. Tamom or Eidim. It's to say, because it says Al Pishnayim Eidim on the basis of two witnesses or three witnesses, meaning to say that even two witnesses can cancel out even many, many witnesses, up to 100. Rabbi Shimon Omer, just like two witnesses. Rabbi Shimon says we have another law that's learned out from the fact that we compare 2 to 3 in the verse. We say just like two witnesses are not killed until both of them are found to be zomim, not just one of the witnesses. Av shlosha, also 3 are not killed in naragin achu shlosha zomim, unless all 3 are found to be false witnesses. Minayin afilu meya. How do we know even if there's 100 witnesses that none of them are killed unless all of them are found to be zomim? Says Rabbi Shimon, says the verse Eidim. Says Eidim. Rabbi Akiva says no. The fact that there's 3 witnesses who come and testify, that third witness does not make it more lenient that none of them are killed unless all of them are killed. But he's coming to be stringent. And to say that the third one has the same law as the first two. How so? So, meaning to say that if the first 2 are killed for being false witnesses, then the third one, even though the third one was not necessary to the testimony, he's also going to be killed on the basis of just like the first 2 are killed, he's going to be given the same punishment. And Im Kain Anash Kosav, so now the Gemara teaches us a powerful idea. Im Kain Anash Kosav nitpa over Avera ka over Avera. If the Torah punishes somebody who's just adjacent, who's an adjunct to the sinners, as though he's the sinner himself, even though he wasn't necessary for the sin. How much more so will we get a reward for those who are adjunct to the mitzvah as though they actually did the mitzvah? Because we know that Hashem pays us back for Midah Tova much greater than for Midas Peronios. Because it says, and God gives us kindness for the thousands. So if this is the punishment, we're punished for being an adjunct, how much more so are we going to be rewarded for being an adjunct to a mitzvah? And we have another law by comparing 2 to 3. This is another drush of Rabbi Akiva. Just like with 2, if one of them is disqualified, the testimony is canceled. They do some matela. Also 3, if one of them is discovered to be a relative or disqualified, the testimony is canceled. And how do we know even if 100 are? How do we know even 100 are disqualified? Testimony is canceled. Tamalom agent. The verse says witnesses, meaning to say that even if if the 100 people come and testify and one of them is discovered to be a relative, then all the witnesses are going to be disqualified. Amar Rabbi, we're on top of Vav Amar Aleph. Amar Rabbi Yossi B'Med V'Mamur B'Dinei Nefashos. Rabbi Yossi says this idea that one cancels out all of them is only by a capital case. So B'Dinei Mamanos by a monetary case to Staima Eidos B'Shtar. then we say no. One witness going bad does not cancel out all the other witnesses, but the testimony is valid with all the remaining witnesses. Rabbi Omer echadine mamanos echadine nefashos. Rabbi says no, it's the same law by a capital case and by a monetary case. The Amasai, when is this the case? Bisman shehasru bahen, where they were all warned of a bisman shelo hasru bahen. But if they were not all warned, and so therefore they didn't intend to be witnesses, a witness group. Mayasa, what are you going to do? So anybody who kills in front of two brothers is automatically exempt. So therefore, it's only if they were warned together as a witness group, then we're going to say that they disqualify each other. But if they weren't warned together, then they don't disqualify each other. So Rava says that which we said that two are like 100, that which we said that two are like 100, and we view them as one testimony, so that they don't become zomen unless all of them are becoming zomen, and also if one of them is disqualified, they're all disqualified. That's where they all testify b'toch kedei dibur. That's the time it takes to say Shalom Aleichem Rebbe. So this is a concept we have many times already, maybe 3 or 4 times in the shot. That the reason why that you are allowed to change your mind, Shalom Aleichem Rebbe, is let's say your Rebbe would walk by, you want to be able to greet him. So therefore, for this reason, so that's the concept of Tokadei Dibor. So this idea that you're disqualified, that you're all together, it's where they say their testimony Tokadei Dibor. So Gemara says, Hey Chidami, what's Tokadei Dibor? Kadesh was Talmud L'Rav. Enough time for a student to greet a Rebbe. So if that's the case, Mea Tupahavi, for 100 witnesses to testify, it's much more than Shalom Aleichem Rabbi. So Gemara says, no, I'm only Kol Chad V'Chad B'Tokadei Dibor Shel Chavero. No, it means that they come up right away, which is also like a crazy scenario, because you could just by the time it takes you to, if you ever go to a courtroom, by the time you get one witness, the other one, it's like 15-minute break in between, every time the judge sneezes. So anyway, this is a scenario. Rabbi Kiva says, no, the third witness is not coming to be lenient, but to be stringent, that he gets the same punishment as the first two. So if you want to say, says Rav Papa, if according to Rabbi Yossi, who says Rabbi Yossi, but more by capital case, by monetary cases, the testimony is good. Meaning, Rabbi Yossi says that a disqualified witness who joins up with the other two will knock out their testimony. So says Rav Papa Abayis, Rav Papa says, if that's the case, Harog Yatzil, then every time somebody is killed, if the witnesses saw a person kill his friend, they'll never be able to testify about him in the court, because also the person who was killed saw the guy killing him. And therefore, he's going to combine with the other witnesses. And so since he's relative to himself, he's not able to testify. So one of them is certainly a karov. And so the Gemara says, no, he didn't know what was going on. He was killed from behind. The Gemara says, Nirba Yatzil. Well, the guy who was sodomized should be able to disqualify the testimony. No, no, he was sodomized from behind, so he had no idea what's going on. So the person who does the execution and the person who does the sodomy, they should say it, because they should be joining with the testimony, and therefore they should disqualify. The Gemara says, so Abai finally was ishtik, he was quiet. Coming to Rava, so Abai brought this question to Rava. This is one of his questions, obviously, has an answer to it. He just didn't know how to respond properly to Rav Papa. He says, Yakum davar, b'mekaymo davar kasa b'davar, meaning to say, matter will be upheld, meaning to say it's only upheld by those who see it, but not by those who are participating. Participants get an exemption. Okay, so the Gemara asked the question now. The Gemara says, how do we ask the witnesses? How do we clarify from the witnesses if they intended to testify or not? So did you come to see it? Were you there just to be looking, or were you coming to be witnesses? Meaning, what was your intent in being there? If they say that we came to testify, if one of them is found to be a relative, the testimony is canceled. If they just came, hey, we're just there looking at the scenery, What are we going to do if two brothers saw somebody kill somebody? It doesn't get automatically exemption card. In Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, halacha k'Rabbi Yossi v'Rav Nachman Amar halacha k'Rabbi. So Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel says the law is like Rabbi Yossi, who says only applies to dinei nefashos, but Shmuel says the law is like Rav Nachman says the law is like Rabbi, who says it applies to dinei nefashos and dinei mamonos. We're at the mission on the top of Bava Beis. If two witnesses saw him from one window. Two witnesses saw him from another window. So one person's in the middle giving her the warning. If part of the witnesses can see another part of the witnesses, it's one testimony. It's one witness group. Otherwise, it's two witness groups. Therefore, if one of the witnesses is found to be a false witness, then he is killed, the defendant is killed, and the false witnesses are killed. Excuse me. The other witness is exempt. No, he's not killed unless both of the witnesses warn him. As it states, it's another explanation of the idea of two witnesses. The Sanhedrin cannot hear it through a translator. How do you know this concept that one person can see from one window, one can see from the other window, and the two witnesses don't need to see each other and still a valid testimony? How do we know that is going to be disqualified? How do we know edus miuchedes if the witnesses don't know about each other? It's not a kosher testimony. It's based on the fact that it says, echad. Maya, it says you cannot put him to death on the basis of one witness. What does it mean when it says echad? You're going to say it's one actual witness. We already learned that from the first clause. If you want to say al pishnayim edim, it says on the basis of two witnesses. Elamai. So what must it mean? Echad, the echad. It means there's one witness from one place and one witness from another place, and still we say it's not a valid testimony. Indeed, we have a brisa that says this. Oh, you must al pi eid echad. Lahavi shnayim sharom echad mechol and zev echad mechol and zev. So it says you should not put to death on the basis of one witness. This comes to include a case where one is seeing from this window, one is seeing from that window, and they don't see each other. That they can't combine. Well, not only that, even if they're both seeing one after the other from the same window, but they don't see it at the same time, that they don't combine. So, I mean, that seems to be less of a chiddush because they're not seeing the same act. So I'm going to Papa Abaye, that's what Papa said to Abaye. If both of them are seeing it at the same time, but from different places, they're both seeing the whole action, and we say that's no good. And we say it's no good. So if one is seeing it from one case, one is seeing it from another, one is seeing it afterwards, they're not both seeing the same thing. Do you need to tell us it's not a valid testimony? So Amar away. So Abai says to Papa, no, there's certain actions, there's certain acts like the sexual act, which there are different parts of the act, but they're all equally prohibited. And so therefore, it's not like a murder where there's one act, where there's one moment where he dies. And so therefore, even if they're both seeing from the same vantage point, but they're seeing different parts of the act, nevertheless, it's going to not be able to combine. Amar Rava, as a masra or masra ron a he says they don't need to be seeing each other, but as long as they saw the person warning them, or if the person warning the person sees both of the witnesses, then they could combine the testimony. This warning person, which the sages said that he needs to warn the person, doesn't need to be warned by the witnesses, even if he warns the person, even if the person who's about to be executed warns him himself. Or even if a shade typically means a demon, but Rambam doesn't believe in demons. So Rambam says that this is just like, well, the Miri says it's just a parable, meaning to say he heard a voice and he didn't see it. That's what the Rambam writes. The Rambam says, takes that towards mipi a shade. And he says, even if he heard it and didn't see it. Even if he heard it and didn't see it. Amar Nachman, edus miuchedes kshera b'dinei mamanos. Edus Miuchedes. What's Edus Miuchedes? Edus Miuchedes is this testimony where we said before that they don't know about the other person. Now we're going to say that's kosher b'dinei mamas. That's kosher by a monetary case. Tachsev well yumas al pi eid echad. So they now put to death on the basis of one witness. B'dinei nefesh hu dein kosher, b'dinei mamas kosher. So Rav says not kosher by capital case, but it's kosher by a monetary case. Ma'aske for Rav Zutra, so Rav Zutra challenges Ramayata b'dinei nefashos. Tatzil. So if that's the case, that by a capital case, one of them should be saved. So, meaning to say, since we said that Edus Miuchedes is shared by Mamanos, if that's the case, also by Dina Nefashos, they should combine to make one testimony, and then it should save him, because we have the principle. Because by Dina Nefashos, we say Vitzilas we should be more lenient. So if we make this rule by monetary case, we should also make the rule by a capital case that they should combine. The Lama Tanan Hu Vehin Nerogin. So why did it say they're killed? So the Gemara says Kasha. Yeah, it's indeed a difficulty. Rabbi Yossi says Olamei Nerogin Ashishnei Edim Master. They're not killed unless both witnesses are warn him. Does Rabbi Yossi really agree with that? But then we learn Rabbi Yossi Omer Hasone, somebody who hates his friend, and he claims that he killed him accidentally. He's not believed. Nerag, he's killed. It's like he's warned. Meaning, say you don't always need to be warned at all. And so here, why do we say he's not killed until both witnesses warn him? So Amrle, Ahu Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. This Rabbi Yossi that says in our Mishnah, this Rabbi Yossi that's mentioned there that says he's killed if he's a Sone, if he hates the person, and we assume that he knew the deal. That's not the same Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah. That's a different Rabbi Yossi. That's Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. The time Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Omer Chaver Ein Sarach Hasra. It says if he's a scholar, he knows the law. He doesn't need to be warned if he's Shalom. It's not Sra. There's only purpose. The only reason why we require the warning is to draw a distinction between shogeg and mezi, between accidental and intentional. Sanhedrin should not hear from a translator. So loaz is the vernacular. It's any language other than Lashon HaKodesh, other than Hebrew. So there were these witnesses who were speaking a different language. It came before Rava. Uki Rava Rava established a translator between them. How could Rava do this? We learned our Mishnah. The Sanhedrin should not hear from the Torgamon. So Rava made So Rava knew what he was saying. So the answer is Rava understood them, but he didn't know how to respond. He was fluent to understand, but he was not fluent to respond. So therefore, he established a translator to respond. We also see from here this law that you can't hear through a translator is not just by the Sanhedrin, but it's by any court. Now we have a question. Eli Vituvia, these were witnesses to a loan, and they were relatives of the guarantor. Kriva, the Arava. They were relatives to the guarantor. Have a Savara Papa Lamemar Gabelovo Malva Rachikininu. So Rav Papa thought to say that with respect to the borrower and the lender, they weren't relatives, and so therefore they could testify in the case. Amar Rafuna Breder Rav Papa Ilaisle Lova Rav Basar Arva Azal Malva. That if there wouldn't be a borrower, wouldn't they go straight to the guarantor? And so therefore he disqualified them on that basis. And this is today's daf. What a beautiful daf. Yasher Koach. And so this is the daf for the second day of Pesach. Shkoyach.